Hello and thank you for taking the time to follow Nghe An TV, the official YouTube channel of Nghe An Newspaper and radio and television on YouTube. Here, we always update the latest and most interesting news every day. Today's program will have the following detailed content. Polish radio station JMF24 reported with reference that the country's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has called on its citizens not to travel to Belarus or leave Belarus by any means available. JMF24 said the Ministry of State Affairs strongly recommends against traveling to Belarus. Polish citizens may face events there that will not be in their favor. Accordingly, in the event of a rapid deterioration of the security situation, border closures, or other unforeseen circumstances, the evacuation of citizens may be much more difficult or even impossible. Earlier on 0th of January, Prime Minister Donald Tusk told journalists that ban would prepare an action plan for Belarus in the coming weeks. Belarusian television reported that the country's State Security Committee in Lepen together with Lipex had detained a Polish citizen on charges of espionage. Secret documents on the 2025 exercises were confiscated from that date. Later, the press secretary of the Polish Special Services Coordinator Sasz Dozinski issued a statement that the detained Polish citizen was accused of having nothing to do with espionage activities but was a monk. The Polish side considered the incident a provocation aimed at destabilizing the situation and affirmed that it would support the detained citizen. According to the European news site Europonews.com, in the first 3 months of the year alone, Western intelligence agencies have detected more than 530 UAVs hovering over military bases, LNG terminals, and key railway lines in eastern Germany. Western intelligence agencies have warned about Russian surveillance UAVs tracking Western arms shipments to Ukraine, and the question is why the German military has not been able to shoot them down. Based on information from Western intelligence agencies cited in the German magazine WCHAP, these UAVs monitor Europe's constantly changing military transport routes to determine the type of weapons, the time and location of new military equipment arriving in Ukraine. A spokesman for the German Ministry of Defense confirmed to News that Bandar Square is only responsible for its own locations. This means that security for civil infrastructure such as railway lines or LNG terminals falls to the Ministry of Interior and the respective civil operators. However, even if authorized to act, the German military is bound by the principle of proportionality, which is to avoid at all costs any risk or harm to innocent people, especially when it is not possible to be certain whether the UAVs are equipped with explosives. This makes the use of force to bring down the drones extremely complicated and almost impossible. The appearance of alleged UAVs from Russia has become particularly frequent and public. The German Post cites an internal report from the BKA Federal Criminal Police Department. Between the 9th and the 29th of May alone, a total of 6 UAVs were detected over the airbase where Ukrainian soldiers were being trained with the Patriot's air defense system. They were openly operating, hovering almost motionless in the air for several minutes. Despite the use of jamming equipment, the UAVs could not be stopped. The Holstein Criminal Police Office, which is in charge of the case, confirmed to the German media that it also believes Germany's critical infrastructure could be a potential target for espionage and sabotage. It has set up a special espionage and sabotage unit at the Federal Security Service, but has refused to provide further details, citing the sensitivity of the investigation. The situation is further complicated by legal loopholes and a prolonged political deadlock. The previous coalition government had planned to amend aviation security laws to allow the German armed forces to shoot down UAVs deemed dangerous, but the proposal was not approved. Konstantin Vot, a member of the Green Party and chairman of the Bundestag's Control Committee, criticized the CDU-CSU for not supporting the proposal due to the party's tactical considerations. He said this had led to months of delays. A delay that we cannot accept given the sharp increase in threats. Sebastian Feller, the domestic policy spokesman for the SPD's artists group, stressed that the responsibility for UAV defense lies with the civil security agencies. He therefore believes that a new draft law giving more powers to the federal police is reasonable. However, MP Vo expressed disappointment with the new draft law on military security of the German federal government because it does not address the issue of military powers. Mr. Not called for a comprehensive and clearly structured basic regulation on the responsibility for UAV defense in both the military and civilian sectors, while emphasizing that the German government is still not capable of countering threats from hybrid attacks. The U.S. military has just successfully tested a high-power wave system that can take down dozens of UAVs at the same time. They expect this new weapon to create a turning point in electronic warfare and defense against cheap UAVs. Accordingly, at the end of August at the Kamaburi Training Ground, the U.S. Army training base in Indiana, the U.S. Army successfully demonstrated the Leonidas wave weapon system developed by Belarus. In the test, 49 helicopters, 4 rotors flying in formation, fell down simultaneously because of just one radio energy pulse. Previously, the U.S. invested tens of millions of U.S. dollars to test Leonidas in the Philippines and the U.S. state of Virginia. But the recent demonstration showed a higher level of practicality, ready to deploy on the battlefield. This immediately attracted attention because it showed a completely different approach to countering UAVs instead of missiles or artillery shells that need to be hit. Each Leonidas target uses microwaves to scan at a 60-degree angle, disabling the components of the entire group of UAVs at the same time. The system is deployed on a software-controlled trailer that is more precise and faster than any physical turret. The outstanding feature of the wave weapon is that it never runs out of ammunition. As long as there is electricity, Leonidas can continue to fight while an anti-aircraft missile costs hundreds of thousands to millions of U.S. dollars. This is a difference that can change the cost balance in trench warfare. However, the test in Indiana took place under controlled conditions. On a real battlefield, UAVs can fly low, take advantage of terrain cover or be programmed to disperse their formations. So can Leonidas maintain its effectiveness on a chaotic front line like the conflict in Ukraine? This is still a question that no one dares to confirm. The U.S. military praises Leonidas as a technology that paves the way for countering UAV swarms. While artillery or lasers only destroy individual UAVs, Leonidas can wipe out entire groups with a single shot. If it is truly effective, this will be a strategic change. From a strategic perspective, the appearance of Leonidas is also a political message to Russia about the technology race. This is a form of soft deception that not only provides current aid but also prepares for the future technology game. However, the opposite effect can also occur. Russia can accelerate the development of anti-jamming UAVs or expand attacks by combining many means, causing the confrontation to enter a new technological spiral. If the U.S. brings Leonidas to the front line, Moscow will certainly not sit still. Since the conflict broke out, both Russia and Ukraine have taken advantage of the return as a cheap but effective weapon. Therefore, UAVs are considered a game changer on the battlefield. UAVs clearly reveal the gap between cheap weapons and the Super Redstone air defense system. In this context, the U.S. testing Leonidas can be seen as an effort to find a solution to counter UAVs with lower-cost technology instead of continuing to burn money on missiles. Despite its impressive performance, Leonidas still has many practical problems. A superior weapon needs to be recognized by real results, but on the front line it is a completely different form than on the training ground when unintended impacts on civilian equipment, especially when deployed near residential areas. Distinguishing civilian UAVs from military UAVs in emergency situations creates a series of difficult problems behind. First, the combat range of Leonidas is still limited because this wave only creates a certain defense zone and cannot replace the multi-layered air defense network. If Russia launches UAV cruise missiles and artillery shells at the same time, will Leonidas have time to react? Second, UAVs can be improved to counter the wave, such as covering it with anti-interference materials or programming an unpredictable trajectory. Then will LEO lose its advantage? Third, field deployment poses a logistical challenge for Ukraine. The system requires a stable power source. Not easy, in the context of the Kyiv's energy infrastructure being constantly attacked by Russia. Is the U.S. ready to provide more mobile energy touch generators to deploy Leonidas? Experts from the U.S. Center for Naval Analyses warn that Leonidas is promising but not a magic wand. This air zone is only useful when integrated into the overall air defense network and must prove its reliability in a real combat environment. In addition, training Ukrainian operators is not simple. Microwave technology requires high technical knowledge, regular maintenance, and a stable supply of components. If only deployed in small numbers, will they make a real difference on the vast front line? Luritas is suitable for point defense but difficult to cover the entire front line of thousands of kilometers. Russia can easily redirect UAVs to avoid the microwave zone and continue to exploit loopholes in Ukraine's defense system. It can be said that the Leonidas test in Indiana reflects a larger trend. The race to militarize the electronic space from electronic warfare radars to microwave weapons. All of which shows that the future of conflict will not only take place with traditional firepower but also in the invisible world of electronic waves. For Ukraine, if deployed, Leonidas can become an irreplaceable but complementary shield to the PIOS, NASAMS, and ARIST systems. For the US, this is an opportunity to test technology in real combat, while sending a message that Washington is preparing for a new generation of weapons. Leonidas brings the prospect of countering UAV swarms, one of the most difficult challenges to deal with today. But from testing to real combat is a big gap where every hypothesis needs to be tested with blood and time. If deployed effectively, Leonidas can weaken Russia's cheap UAV tactics, reduce the cost burden for Ukraine and force Russia to find new countermeasures. At that time, the technological bite will temporarily tilt towards the West. On the other hand, if the Leonidas prove to be limited or are disabled by Russia, they could become more of an expensive experimental weapon than a breakthrough. In any scenario, one thing is certain: electronic warfare and microwave weapons will increasingly become the hot fronts of global security in the coming decade. That said, it remains a major U.S. hope for breakthroughs on the battlefield and the use of microwave weapons as a psychological weapon against the enemy.